Can't find no work, can't find no job, my friend. Money is tighter than it's ever been. Say, man, I just don't understand what's going on across this land. Ah, what's happening, brother? Yeah, what's happening? What's happening, man?
Welcome to the Advocator Show. My name is Lily Mendez.
And I'm Valerie Crawford.
And we are your hosts for today.
The Advocator Show is designed to bring awareness to the community about issues that affect society as a whole, as well as to highlight local businesses and talent coming in and out of Western New York area.
Today's topic is perspective, the tone of the nation. And we will have our guests who are joined here on our location at Phenomenal Expressions located at 517 Main Street in downtown Buffalo to share and discuss some sets of experience and views on the subjects of prejudice, racism, and bigotry, and what impact it has made on our lives.
So our question for today is, are prejudice, bigotry, and racism the same thing? But our answer is no, and this is a high source of misunderstanding. Prejudice is when a person negatively prejudges another person or group without getting to know the beliefs, thoughts, and feelings behind their words and actions. A person of any racial group can be prejudiced towards a person of any other racial group. There is no power dynamic involved. Bigotry is stronger than prejudice, a more severe mindset, and often accompanied by discriminatory behavior. It's arrogant and mean-spirited, but requires neither systems nor power to engage in. Racism is the system that allows the racial group that's already in power to retain power. Since arriving on U.S. soil, white people have used their power to create preferential access to survival resources, housing, education, jobs, food, health, colors, legal protection, etc. For white people, while simultaneously impeding people of color's access to these same resources. Though reverse racism is a term that's sometimes heard, it has not existed in America. White people are the only racial group to have ever established and retained power in the United States. So given the definitions and understanding to the differences, we open up the floor to our panel for discussion.
So stay tuned in. We'll be right back after this short break.
Can you tell which of these children was not born free? Can you tell which of these children was not born equal? Can you tell which of these children does not deserve to be treated with dignity? We can't either. Human right number one. We are all born free and equal. What are human rights? Find out at youthforhumanrights.org.
Welcome back to the Advocator Show. Again, my name is Lily.
And my name is Valerie.
And we're your hosts today. We're here on location at Phenomenal Expressions located at 517 Main Street in the downtown Buffalo area. And today's show is about perspective, the tone of the nation. We're discussing racism, bigotry, and prejudice with our guests who all agreed to join us and share their experiences and views with all of the viewing audience today. So question one, let's start with prejudice. How do you compare it to racism, and what are your experiences with prejudice in your daily lives?
Well, anybody can be prejudiced. As a matter of fact, I think all of us have some prejudice in us, in that we'll have a tendency to want to like our own more than we like someone else. You like your brother or your sister rather than you like your neighbor. And many of us don't get that confused with racism, because just because someone is close to me, a brother that's far away is not as close as a friend that's next door. And I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, as Norman and I were both talking, and some of those people there were very, very close to me. What I did not understand, though, is they thought that I was their favorite little Molignant. Bourguignon meaning eggplant, and meaning a term for black people, which is not necessarily a positive term. But because they knew me, it wasn't so much of racism, but they might have been just a little bit prejudiced. And so there I see a difference there. None of us had so much money that we could be straight up bigots. So, you know, that's another thing that happens. When you live close proximity to one another, you get to know one another, and therefore you have a milder form of racial antagonism against one another. You may be a little prejudiced, but you won't necessarily be a bigot or a racist.
I also think that a lot of prejudice is oftentimes grounded in stereotypes. For example, we used to hear, or my grandmother used to say to me, "Girl, don't wear all those loud colors. You look like A, B, C, X, Y, Z," whatever group of the day she was thinking about. And that wasn't grounded in anything other than mythology, suppositions or rumors that you had heard. So I think that's really part of the fundamental problem with prejudice, is that it's very opinionated, very subjective, and typically grounded in things that are stereotypical and not fact-based at all. And we all have them. They come in the form of jokes and quips and quotes that we think might be cute, but are not. So that's how I really feel about that. It's not part of the system, and as you say, not part of being a bigot and that strength, but a suppositional thing that is negative by and large.
When you look at the word prejudice, you look at the word Judas in judgment, and prejudice in general is just judgment based on anything that you think, any information or opinions that you have. So it's just judgment based, not opinion, they're not factually based or anything. So generally, a lot of the times, prejudice would be confused with racism. Though racism has a much larger and more impactful sort of definition to it, prejudice can be pretty much for anything. It doesn't even have to come in with ethnicity or race. You can look at someone's clothes, as you said before, and just instantly have a judgment about them, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wrong about it. And prejudice is just generally never a good thing.
Prejudice basically based off of ignorance, because we don't take the time to find out what it is that we're judging.
Yes.
So you make a call on somebody, like she said, as far as your beliefs, as far as the clothing that you wear. And nowadays, there's a high rate of not so much just racism, but the prejudice with our communities, because we do have different cultures that have come over here. And just because they're dressing differently than we're dressing, we assume and we judge that they are going to behave in a manner that we might not even have any knowledge of, but we heard. So we're being a little bit prejudiced in that manner also.
Some things are taught from generation to generation. I've met some people, and we had a nice discussion as far as different colors, different cultures. And you think about if it's taught, like racism, white supremacy, which is, like I said, it makes someone think about hate somebody for no reason. So it's still judgmental, but it's to the point where you want to destroy that person in every form of action because you've been taught that you're better than that person because your color is a different color from the other person. You know, this is a big issue we have in America today. We have to go back and look at, okay, Caucasians came on the Mayflower. They are also immigrants. So when we came on, if they say we came on slave ships and they came on immigrants, we are immigrants here. But we are tied to this nation, if you really look at it. So we're all here. And when you look at the dynamics and the division to stay up on top, to destroy one race to stay up on top, so that you have what they call favors, or as they say, what's another name for it? Privileges. They call it white privileges. From another. And that's not really fair to anybody. What are you gonna say to a 2-year-old child? He doesn't understand that. 5-year-old child, he doesn't understand that. Doesn't matter what color they are, they don't understand that, but because it's taught.
So understanding that, and knowing what we're going through now to determine, to explain the difference between prejudice, racism, and bigotry, can prejudice be stopped?
It depends. It depends where you're getting your information from and who's feeding it. Many things you'll definitely look at comes from a media aspect where they'll, even nowadays you see immediately the first thing that they do, even as adults who do have children and go on, the first thing they do is they put them in front of television. And television will definitely teach them different things. Just even within the minor cartoons such as Dora, they immediately start putting these stereotypes within young children's TV shows. So it's something that we really got to figure out what we can do to stop it and where it's coming from. Even within not particular clothing ads, but certain ads will only have different type of models wearing different types of clothes. So it's setting up your ability to be prejudiced subconsciously before you even talk about it. They already told you what you have to look like to wear their jeans. So we have to really think about where can we impact the most. That's where it comes from. Where can we make the biggest change, and where it stems from.
Well, I have a question with that, something that's actually going on right now in our community. They're trying to figure out now in the schools how to integrate a certain mindset with our kids to stop, again, not racism, but just the prejudice. So again, that's my question. If prejudice is ignorance, and not in the form where you would use it derogatory, but it's just literal ignorance of not knowing another culture or taking the time to teach our children. And we got to start there, because a lot of us, once you get a certain age, you got your mindset, but bringing them up, like you said, choosing what you sit them in front of, choosing what you as a parent in your household discuss, because like you said, prejudice is a learned thing. So is that something that, and I'm just throwing it out there, that prejudice can be stopped? Not the racism, but the prejudice.
Prejudice actually means to prejudge. We all do it. We all do it. They say you have just a few seconds to make a first impression. So every time someone walks through the door or walks by, we have thoughts in our head about that person. We make judgments. Even if it's not something negative, we do make judgments. Anything we see through our eyes, we do. We tend to judge that. It depends on if you want to be open enough to really find out more, because your impression can be wrong. And so when we talk culturally, am I willing to learn about you? And I think one of the main things is that growing up, what we saw on television. And so we did not see a lot of people of color on television. And so when I ended up being bused to another school, one of the big things was this stuff on the top of my head. And because we knew about hair, we knew about straight hair because we saw it, we had that exposure, but our hair was a big mystery. And even to this day, even with my daughter growing up and the teachers kind of brushing by her just to kind of feel her hair, it's still a mystery. So you could make a judgment about it and say, well, dreads are dirty or this, whatever people want to say, but until you're open enough to learn something, then that judgment is still going to be there.
I think we enjoy, whether you agree or disagree, but we enjoy being prejudiced. We enjoy talking about someone else, more so looking at our own selves. You asked the question, can it be stopped? Anything can be stopped if you want it to be stopped at the end of the day, okay? But so many people are wrapped up in talking about something else, someone else. They forget, how does the saying go? The glass house saying? We all know it. But we will preach it to someone else, but we refuse to live it. You know what I'm saying? Living it as in, okay, let's mind our words, let's mind our thoughts, all right? And pretty much it's, until we check ourselves, no, it cannot be stopped. And that's just the bottom line.
I think prejudice can be overcome on an individual basis, and it was already said, it's the willingness to find out something that you don't know about something or someone else. You know, especially when it comes to people. You know, my grandmother used to say all the time, don't judge a book by its cover. But I find myself doing that quite a bit. You know, I'm prejudiced, I'll be the first to admit it. But I'll tell you another thing about me, is I'm always willing to find out what you're about. And that's how I can find out whether or not I want to be a friend. You know, I don't want nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with your skin, your hair, your clothes. You know, if you start looking at people through those eyes, you'll always be lost. Always.
We have to also look at the way it portrays people. You may see commercials. They have the Caucasian woman with the mixed child and the black guy. And they have the opposite, the woman with the white guy and the mixed child. Or they don't really pair up a lot of you look at the Family Dollar sign, for instance, they always say that just the mother. If you look at the sign, really, it's only telling you this is a mother and her children. There's no man involved in that. And there's always been a problem with that. The media has its way of portraying in your conscious, subconscious, unconscious level the negativity. Even as a child, starting with cartoons and all further commercials, and even some of the shows they got now, it's just a lot of rhetoric, killing, murdering, and all this other stuff. It's to desensitize you to the truth. Mm-hmm. It's to desensitize you of what's happening. Let's say you come out of a church and somebody's, raping a woman. Next thing you know, you be like, oh, they just getting it in. You're being desensitized from the truth, basically.
I think when I listen to the tone and the explanation and breaking it down like it's beans, right? I think that it's a deep-seated fear. I don't really necessarily believe, I do believe you can be taught anything. And you kind of only know what you're exposed to. But as adults, I think we have a deep-seated fear. And considering the climate of government, politics, leadership, supposed leadership, I believe that it's warranted. It's warranted, and not necessarily black, white, Hispanic, that kind of thing. I think this is an economic fear that we are facing.
Well, Valerie, not to cut you off, but that's a good introduction into the racism. So we'll stop right here.
We'll be right back after our break and some brief messages.
Phenomenal Expressions is a sponsor of the Advocator Show. Our hand-selected jewelry and uniquely crafted ensembles are for those who aspire to convey elegance, individuality, and style.
Welcome back to the Advocator Show, and my name is Valerie.
My name is Lily.
And we are your hosts for today. We're here on location at Phenomenal Expressions at 517 Main Street in downtown Buffalo, and today's show is about perspective, the tone of the nation, and we are discussing prejudice, bigotry, and racism, with our guests who agreed to join us today and share their experiences and views with all of our viewing audiences.
So when we left off, we were talking about prejudice. It was leading into racism, but I kind of want to save that for the end. So let's meld into bigotry a little bit, because it's something that not many people want to talk about, and you were leaving off on something really big, so I want to continue with what you were saying before.
I brought up the issue of fear.
Yes.
And I think a lot of our behaviors and attitudes are fear-based. And I believe that's what we're taught. Because anything different, we need to be afraid of. Anything that's not the status quo, we should be afraid of. Anything new, we probably should be afraid of that. And of course, this trickles down into the fabric of who we are as Americans. I think the biggest fear, and we probably don't even recognize this if we look at a social stratification ladder, You talked about prejudice, bigotry, racism. The biggest fear are the elitists, the ones who own 90%, 95% of everything. So as long as they can feed us this idea of fear, we miss out on the economic opportunities that are due us. And they take our attention to the white girl with the blonde hair that I don't have, the one with the blue eyes, you said there was a black woman, a mixed, so that's another thing, a mixed child, and a white husband. You know, we begin to become the bean counter, and we do their work for them. And those things don't really matter. I'm gonna show up every day in my skin, and I'm gonna make some money. I mean, that's our goal. You go after your life, the quality of life you wanna live. No one should dictate that, ever. And I am never gonna be fearful. Our humanity is what connects us. Our humanity is what keeps us higher on the food chain than the animals.
And so when you talk about humanity and fear, I would say that bigotry comes from fear. That fear of the unknown, that fear of something that you don't particularly want for yourself, so you gotta convince other people that they don't want it either. Why don't you retouch up on what bigotry is?
No problem. Bigotry is stronger than prejudice, a more severe mindset and often accompanied by discriminatory behavior. It's arrogant and mean-spirited, but requires, and this is the part we need to focus on here, requires neither systems nor power to engage in. So you don't have to be the most wealthy, you don't have to be the one feeding the underdog for bigotry. That's that line we're treading on there.
Couldn't you also say that that's tribalism? Because basically, it's my tribe has to dominate your tribe in order for me to be successful. My grandmother used to say something, she said, you don't have to blow out somebody else's candle in order for yours to burn. And the thing is that we fall into a thing now where the fear is that, this brother here mentioned about the fact of the media feeding us certain garbage that we then regurgitate because we've been taught to believe it. 70% of the people who are on any type of government assistance in America are white people. The average person on welfare in America is a white woman with 3 children who lives on the first ring of the suburbs of major cities. However, when you see anything about public assistance, food stamps, or anything else, the image that you're shown is of a black woman in an urban center. Now that is the picture that you've been shown, and that's what you've been taught. This is bad. You have a situation right now with a pro football player, Colin Kaepernick, because he's got a big afro, and he maybe harkens back to the Black Panthers or something. All of a sudden people are upset because he's taking a knee in protest of the fact that black men are getting killed like it's hunting season, and for no reason whatsoever in many cases. And that's all he brought it up for. But what he messed up on is he allowed Trump and other people to hijack it and say all of a sudden it's about the police and about the military, when that wasn't the case at all. The media is, on one hand, it's our biggest educator, but it's our biggest enemy as well as being our biggest friend. I'm probably the oldest person here. Maybe Joe, you might have me.
I might.
I'm 70.
Oh, no, I don't have you.
Okay, well, I'm the oldest person here. And when you were talking about what you saw on television, I never saw anybody black on television. There were no black people on TV until Ed Sullivan would introduce black people in his audience. Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte. That's when we started seeing black people on TV. You didn't see anybody on TV. And so we had no image of a positive image of what black people were doing or what we were about on television. And that was the medium that taught everybody.
I'd like to, though, interject a couple of things historically, because Valerie brought up some good points, as well as you did. The founding of the United States of America, as we know it today, there were individuals hundreds of years ago, and I'll stick with African Americans because the Native nations, which our Constitution is built on, by the way, the Seneca Nation is the one who made the Constitution. We ain't made it up. We had economic success. So part of the bigotry, in my opinion, is not so much a fear of failure, but fear of success. So in other words, Madam C.J. Walker, first really big millionaire, oh, no, 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 no. And that has handed all the way across the years to Barack Obama. Because I will stand by the fact that we are having what I call Obama backlash. Because there are so many people in Congress and the Senate and other parts of the money-making environments who said there's no way that a black man with a name like Obama should be the most powerful man in the world. To the point where there were high-ranking officials who would engage in disrespectful behavior towards our president. And there were incidents of this time after time after time. So they didn't want him to have power, which is really part of the system of racism, not so much bigotry, but feeding into that system was their personal belief of the individuals who are inferior. Native Americans, inferior. Latino Americans, inferior. Asians, don't matter Asians in America, you're good for this and not good for that. So it was really suppressive in terms of what we're entitled to, which is your elite, which is how we ultimately came to this quote-unquote 1%. And when you break down the economics of the 1%, it is frightening. And so we engage in societal behavior that is the tail wagging the dog, so to speak.
Definitely. And then really got to get concerned into about how that get bigotry into certain government agencies and how that affects back into the regular population, not just law enforcement, different individuals that would definitely go into certain centers to get help. And because they're asking for help, they're being seen as a certain way and getting treated as a certain way and won't get the help that they actually went in there to need, which is their right to get that help. So I think bigotry, it's just not so much on a level whereas it's in the public where you see down in North Carolina where hate groups are going against each other. I think it infiltrated into different aspects of the public where it's into the government aspects, in the population, it's in the media. And even though it may have happened to those individuals on a personal level, it's going on mass worldwide. Yeah, we're not calling it that because it's too much of a critical word to say it, but I believe it's definitely there.
Much love to you all. I would like to thank all of you for coming and taking your time out of your busy schedules to speak with us on the Advocator Show today. I would like to thank the viewing audience once again. And to view other episodes at the Advocator Show, go to our website at
www.LATELUCIProductions.com. Follow the Advocator Show on social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have a story that you want to tell and you want to be a guest on the Advocator Show, contact us by Facebook or email us at latelucy@verizon.net. That's LATELUCI@verizon.net. We would like to thank Nikita Williams and her team for giving us the opportunity to host this episode of the Advocator Show. Again, I'm Valerie Crawford.
I'm Lily Mendez.
And we were your hosts for today. Thank you.
All right.